Prime Research Cast.
How's it going? Quick supplemental here. I want to kind of cover. So I did the Joe Rogan interview with Jon Stewart. This is all from the same trip back from Idaho. So I also listened to his interview with Bret Weinstein. Weinstein, I think Weinstein, right? Anyway, I wanted to touch on something. He brought up his theory, or kind of, I guess it's a theory. What do you call it? The dark horse duo presidential plan. I want to. Okay. First, I hope this isn't outside the bounds of what the AI STEM drive is, what STEM theory is. But given that STEM theory is, I don't know, it's kind of all-inclusive. I'm not planning on laying out any sort of political, I guess, governmental restructuring or anything like that. I think that sort of thing would sort of take on its own shape and happen just by the nature of what STEM theory is and how everything works. However, I don't know. I just wanted to make a comment on this. So his dark horse duo presidential plan is kind of the idea that you have two, non-extremist leftists and left wing and right wing sort of presidential pairs, and not extreme, just kind of like rightish, leftish kind of a thing, and they go into office together. I see that there's brilliance to this, but, his idea was to have them take turns. So one serves a term, the next one serves the next term. So they're both voted in at a time, and you have that sort of oscillation, right? I get it, totally. I would just like to make a suggestion, lowly old little me making a suggestion to Bret Weinstein. But this is kind of, I don't know. This is what I thought of immediately as I was listening to his proposal. Back when I was searching a little bit more for like mystical answers, and I believed in, or was trying to believe in things that really had no substance, I read a book called the Cabal Yin. I don't know if any of you know what this is. Many of my more kind of guru-ish spiritual-like books I tossed, but this and a few others I kept because of just some of the principles in it are just rooted in reality. There's not a whole lot of woo in it. And when I first read this book, and I'm getting to a point here, I was kind of surprised at how many of the so-called cosmic laws, the 7 cosmic laws, were, I almost felt like I was reading a physics book. There's, laws of polarity, and I don't know, that's sort of the sense that I got as I was reading it. It felt more like I was reading a physics book and simply how the universe works, from one perspective, from my perspective, than it felt like I was reading anything spiritual. And one of them is, I'm not sure what exactly it's called, but the law of like polar opposites. Kind of the idea that if you, in almost everything, there is some sort of opposition. And we know that in physics, that is the case. That's the whole point, the whole idea behind symmetry, right? So this kind of comes into play. His whole proposal with putting, two opposites into kind of consecutive terms. But I would argue that there's a little bit more at play than just having two separate parties. Politics is way more complicated than that. And I wouldn't put them in consecutively. I wouldn't say, okay, you serve and then you serve. I would try to encourage them to serve together. Like, why do you have to have just one guy serving that office at any one time? Why can't you have more than one guy? Why can't you have, 5 or 6 guys, each one representing, some subsection of interests within the populace? And okay, for instance, you have, other political parties, the people, independent, you have the Green Party, you have all these kind of little groups. But I think there's kind of a threshold that once you pass that, you deserve sufficient representation. You can't have, So you have, an idea that kind of crops up, or a paradigm or whatever, and it spreads. And at first you have, maybe a group, maybe a classroom of people, maybe a professor's kind of instigating this or whatever the case is. But after a while, if it's a catchy enough idea, whether or not it's a good or bad idea, if it's a catchy enough idea, you'll have people falling in line. And I think that needs to be taken into account here. I think the whole Democrat-Republican duality that is just like so ardently just reinforced is just so bad on so many levels. Why does it always come down to those two? Like, those are the two craziest. They're the two most illogical, especially when you get to the extremes. If you get to the extremes of any one ideology, you get into, some sort of ideological psychosis. But, so, I don't know, maybe there's a mathematical formula where you can sort of determine, once there's a certain saturation in the populace, whether or not it deserves representation. Obviously, 1 or 2 people, whatever, classroom, whatever. But if it's something where it's becoming fairly widespread, even if it's like 10%, I don't know, 15, 20% of the populace, I don't know. I think there should be some sort of mathematical way to determine this, or what the group's accomplishments are, how many organizations they have, how much money, maybe. I really couldn't say. But I think there'd be a way to determine this. And once you figure this out, the idea of taking, a representative from each party and having them all serve in sort of a quorum, like, not a quorum is that definitionally, like, is the lexical definition of a quorum 12, or can it be more? I think it's just 12. Okay, not a quorum, a group, right? A presidential group of people that run together. Because once you have discussions like that, and they all serve the same term, they're all in office together, they all serve the same term, and they can sit down and discuss options and talk about it and work it out. You would have to find people that aren't hotheads. You would have to find people that aren't going to, lose their minds, or that are, willing to stand up for their ideals, but at the same time willing to negotiate and I don't know, give up little pieces of what they want in order to kind of achieve a more coherent, inclusive objective. But that's my 2 cents. Where are we at? Dear God, how do I do this? That's almost 11 minutes. Sorry. Anyway, that's my thought. Back to the Cabal Yin thing. I think it's interesting to note that the idea of alternating them, and this is immediately what came to my mind. So, as supporting his idea of alternating terms, is kind of the idea that within an electric motor, that's how you get the motor to spin and to gain momentum and gain speed, is you're literally alternating, like the polarity. And AC motors work differently than DC motors, but they both have a polarity alternation. They both have some sort of way of like alternating as it's moving around, so it attracts the next one or repels the last one, and it keeps the what is it, the shaft, the turbine, I guess, whatever it's called, spinning. So I think there's a lot of sense to that. And I'm not saying politics is like an electric motor. I don't think that's the case at all. But I think there's something to be said about that. And I don't know if that, if in politics, if that would ramp something up, and whether or not that which it ramps up would be good to have it ramped up, have it spinning fast. Anyway, that's it. That's what I wanted to say. I think it would be better to have solid, stable-minded people representing, the significant political movements, one for each. I mean, so what? You have a room full of 50 dudes. You at least have somebody for each kind of paradigm within the populace, and you can talk shit out, and things that don't really matter to other groups, they can gather in smaller groups. And I think there would be, I think if you didn't do it right, it could be messy. But, heartburn. I think if you did do it right, it would be super, super effective. Way more effective than having the alternating parties that really only consists of two fundamental parties, the two parties that have been giving us the biggest headaches, plural. I don't know. Just a thought. Okay, I'm out. See you guys next time.